Welcome to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. I'm Kate Moore-Youssef, and I'm a wellbeing and lifestyle coach, EFT practitioner, mum to 4 kids, and passionate about helping more women to understand and accept their amazing ADHD brains. After speaking to many women just like me, and probably you, I know there is a need for more health and lifestyle support for women newly diagnosed with ADHD. In these conversations, you'll learn from insightful guests, hear new findings, and discover powerful perspectives and lifestyle tools to enable you to live your most fulfilled, calm, and purposeful life wherever you are on your ADHD journey. Here's today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome back to the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. I am Kate Moore-Youssef, your host, and today I have Leanne Maskell. Now, if you are on LinkedIn and you are a big follower of ADHD and ADHD Advocacy, you will probably know her, recognize her name. And Leanne is an ADHD coach. She's an author and an activist, having presented to the World Health Organization on improving global access to support for ADHD. Previously working in mental health and disability law, Leanne set up ADHD Works to empower as many people as possible to learn about how to make ADHD work for them through courses, talks, and coaching, all of which we're going to talk about on today's podcast. And after being diagnosed with ADHD aged 25, Leanne has published 3 books, including ADHD and A to Z, as featured on Sky News and lots of other platforms. So I am delighted to have you here, Leanne. Welcome to the podcast. We've been trying to do this for a while. I'm just happy that finally we've managed to schedule it and we're here.
Me too. Thank you for having me. I love your podcast. I'm very
Oh,
privileged to be here. Thank
well,
you.
no, I do feel the same because I am on LinkedIn. I would say I sort of try and post, but I am more of a taker-inner. I like to kind of like read all the posts and everything. And yours, I would say your platform that you have on LinkedIn is really powerful. And I've seen how you've grown it. And I'm in awe of your vulnerability that you put out there, but also the amount of effort and dedication you put out there for the awareness and the advocacy of ADHD, and especially in the workplace. And I guess I just wondered first of all, where does that come from? And how have you seen the advocacy that you've put out there? How have you seen the tide start changing a little bit since you've been doing that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I basically, once I left my job in law and became an ADHD coach, I was like, I've got no dignity left. So it was like, I have to write on LinkedIn that I'm an ADHD coach. And it's a funny platform because when I first started posting on it, like when I got my job, I was like, oh, hello everyone, I've got a job, a real job. Congratulations, after spending so long. And which is what I think most people approach the platform, because it's such a it's like an extension of an office, in that we're all kind of masking and being like, oh, like I'll get messages from people a lot where they say, I want to like your posts, but I don't want my manager to see it because they might think that I've got ADHD. And like,
Oh,
I'm like, well, that's okay. That's fine. Um,
yeah.
and for me personally, I also have struggled with social media a lot myself, like, which I think is a huge part of ADHD actually, and like the dopamine and the instant gratification. And like I grew up modeling as well, so it's a huge kind of impact on Instagram. And when I became an ADHD coach, would it be about a year and a half ago now, I was inundated by parents at the start and teenagers that were really struggling with similar issues, TikTok mainly. And it was so overwhelming for me that I started writing a book called The Reality Manifesto to try and help them, like with my own experiences of when I was 22, I deleted my whole Instagram account, like the whole entire thing. And I had like loads of fake followers on there and stuff from modeling. And like, as a model, you know how fake it is.
Mm.
And like all of the other fellow models all had like fake followers, and we'd get free things if we had certain amount of followers. Like at auditions, they ask you how many followers you had, and like those were in the quite early days of Instagram as well. And I was like editing all my photos, and I was literally like a model, like having like I was editing professional photos taken of me. So God knows what these kids are going through now. And they've got the filters; they can do it automatic, like it's done for them in seconds. So, anyways, I kind of wanted to write about that, but ironically, I was feeling too addicted to Instagram to write in the book. So I deleted the whole, like I deleted my account for a while. I deleted my whole Facebook account a long time ago as well, which really improved my relationships with my family. I would recommend it if anyone's struggling.
Mm.
And then that left LinkedIn, and I was quite bored because I basically had got off other platforms to try and concentrate on focusing this book on, like, writing that about social media, and then I got bored and started writing more on LinkedIn, and then it became my new daily habit, and now I'm managing to not write books and instead just write on LinkedIn like a daily update of my life, which I don't really think about too much, but yeah, it's been really beyond incredible to see it grow. Also for me, I like writing a lot, like, I think by writing,
Mhm.
so that is a good platform for me to just, like, get all my thoughts out, and then the same thing, I really get very angry at seeing how disempowered people are because they don't have the tools to do things, and, like, as I've grown in my work and, like, presenting to companies on things like, adjustments for disability in the workplace, but then if they don't have, like, a reasonable adjustments policy in place for people to know how to even access these things that I'm presenting on, that feels quite annoying for me. So then I just made, like, a free policy and put it on the internet. Like, "Here, use it. Give it to your employer." So I really, really love it because it's a very, very agile platform and very flexible, and I can just come up with templates and things and put them on there and empower people to take action. And now, as you mentioned, we've got, a petition that has gone to Parliament, and Parliament are having a debate on that next week, and I just got an email and put it on, and it was shared so many times about, like, raising awareness, and I thought, "Oh, I could create a, template for people to write to their MP," because again, like, I know from my experiences now that if you write to an MP, they have to reply to you. So I was like, "Oh, or just give everyone the tool to do that. Find a website where they can do it really quickly and really easily." And then it's making it really easy for people to do. And amazingly, now Parliament have put out a a survey for people to give their experiences with ADHD and autism assessments, which will help evidence their debate. And so then sharing that again, and, like, yeah, it's just a really, really nice, like, productive platform.
Yeah. I feel like what you really do use it as a force for good, and you are very generous with your time, and you're generous with the information that you give to people, like that free information where they can, especially with ADHD or any neuro diversity, it's really hard to get going and to start and to be like, oh my God, I need to write the letter, or I need to understand what accommodations. And you're kind of getting them over the line by giving them the template, and you're giving them almost like some of the words and the language that they can use, which makes everything so much easier. Because to just have that conversation in the workplace is really hard mentally, to be like, where do I
Yeah.
start? The fear, the RSD, the worry, there's so much there. And that's what I really value with what you're doing right now, because I say my space is definitely sort of like helping women with their well-being, mental health, probably late diagnosed women. I'm older than you, so my audience is sort of coming to me in their sort of their 40s and their 50s, who are trying to navigate and understand their lives. But a massive part of well-being and understanding yourself is like the career that you've chosen, and the workplace, and the how you, I guess, the worth that you put on your career. And again, also it's almost like an invitation to readjust how you want to work, and maybe change careers, and maybe lean into your strengths that you'd been pushing away, or felt like you had to conform to a certain way. So I do feel like it's also interrelated, because if we are fulfilled and content in our careers, in our workplace, that has a direct impact on our mental health. It has a direct impact on the way we are with our families and our kids and everything. So I just love how it's all so interconnected. But just being able to talk about it on LinkedIn, and what is upsetting, when you say you get messages from people that come to you and say, I really want to like your post, comment on your posts, and that mask, they're not ready to drop that mask, they're not ready to be vulnerable, or perhaps they're not in a safe space to do that.
Mm.
And it seems ridiculous, because maybe we're in a bit of an echo chamber with our LinkedIn, and I follow a lot of people who are talking about neurodiversity, and it kind of feels like the tide is shifting, the mood's changing, people are becoming more open. But then you realize, actually, in the much bigger corporates, especially when it's deemed, if you work in law or accountancy, or, like really staid corporate places, they're not interested in neurodiversity. They're not interested in supporting or
No.
making accommodations. What would you love to see in your advocacy, in your work, especially because in the grand scheme of things, you've not been doing this for long. So what have you seen, I guess, already changing, and what would you love to see in the next 5 years?
I think it's a big question.
Mm.
Like everything. Um, yeah, because I think there are so many different elements of it. Um, but particularly, I guess if we focus on the workplace, like my general life and like the work I do, I just love like giving people tools to empower themselves. Generally against exploitation, and like that's a big part of all of the advocacy with ADHD. And for me, working as an ADHD coach and previously having worked in law, like mental health and disability law, actually, it makes me so angry on people's behalf when I see them, like, asking for basic support and being told, like, "No, we can't do that." Like, "No, no, that would set a bad example to other people," and stuff, and you're like, "Oh my god, I want to bang my head against the wall," because it's the law, right? And it's like, they don't have a choice, like, and actually empowering people to understand their rights, and I think with ADHD in general, like in the UK, adults couldn't be diagnosed until 2008. So there are so many adults now being diagnosed, and yeah, a huge number of reasons for that. But for the purposes of like actually what that means for you next, like the whole journey there is very long and like complex. That can the whole topic in itself. But then once you actually do get this magical diagnosis, or even if you don't get that, like once you understand, okay, this is something that affects me and I'm
Mhm.
experiencing these challenges, like what do you do next with that information? Like what does that mean for you? And I think for people to understand their basic rights of like,
Mm.
hey, this shouldn't be happening. Like, you shouldn't be being discriminated against at work. Or for me, it was like, hey, you shouldn't have to pay £300 a month to access medication. Like, that's not a normal. Because I remember going through that and thinking, but how on earth does other people like, how does everyone else do this? Because like £300 a month is so much money. Like, that's not, that can't be like everybody's experiences. So that's kind of what led me to write all the books that I've written, because there's no rule book. There's no experience out there of what should be happening.
Mhm.
And I think in terms of like companies and reasonable adjustments and things, I think they're in really tricky places, the companies, because, for example, in the UK, the Equality Act applies whether someone has got a diagnosis of ADHD or anything else or not. Like, you're not allowed to be discriminated against. Then you've got people that are on huge, massive waiting lists and wanting help, or people that are being diagnosed with ADHD, etc. But they, again, that no one tells you, like, congratulations, you've been diagnosed with ADHD. Here's an entire, analysis of your personality and all of the things that could help you, and now you're going to be perfect. Have a wonderful life. You're kind of just dumped with this diagnosis.
Yeah.
No one tells you what that means. Then you're left down a new rabbit hole trying to figure it out, and along the way, there are a lot of people that will exploit you, like, and it's really awful, and that's why, like, I've made courses and things for people, but the first one I needed to make was, like, ADHD and understanding what that means for you and, like, how to take responsibility for it and, like, what you can do in the way of, like, I don't know, being a happier person or managing some of the challenges before you go and rush into your work and say, "Hello, here are my adjustments I would like." Because guess what? If the support isn't there or they don't have the training, which I think it's something like 77% of companies haven't given their employees neurodiversity training. So chances are they probably haven't. Like, you can actually really go down this very stressful and unnecessary hole of like fighting for rights and not understanding it. And anyway,
Yeah.
that's a bit of a tangent. But I think that the biggest thing that employers should do is have a reasonable adjustments policy in place, like training, so that at least, because it's impossible to expect them to train managers, for example, on every single possible condition out there and know how to handle it. But at least if they've got a policy that explains like this is what to do if you do experience like any kind of challenges to do with health or anything else like childcare. This is what you can do. This is how you can talk to us about that, and this is the kind of things that will happen next. These are the questions that we might ask, and it'll be an ongoing, supportive process. It's not here to like terrify you and make you think that we're going to fire you. Like, but giving that reassurance and being a bit more human. training up their managers in that process and then offering them support when it happens because yeah, and I think so it's like education on both sides and just bringing a bit more like humanity and I think vulnerability into them in general from a world where we're like, ah, everyone's got these things now. What do we do? Oh my God, we don't want to set conditions for everybody, but just actually being a bit more like supportive and listening to people.
No, I think you're right, 100%. And what I'm kind of feeling is that when we get a diagnosis, then we have to go into our workplace. That's going to cause friction, because the friction is going in and asking for the accommodations and asking for changes to be made. And if we are a people pleaser, if we have, we suffer from RSD, that's going to be a really big thing. It's a massive undertaking. And if we're just processing the ADHD and just understanding how it's shown up and everything, then to have to go and explain and need validation and not be questioned, and like you said, this sort of a non-judgmental space. We want to go in there and know that that person's not going to be like, well, are you sure you don't look like you've got ADHD, or you've never flagged it up before, or you don't seem to have a problem sitting and you're never fidgeting, these questions, which may just seem a little bit trivial or just, surface questions,
Mm.
are feeding directly back into that kind of like, well, actually, is there anything wrong with me? Or should I really be here? And all the imposter syndrome. So we need, I think, if there are going to be diversity experts, specialists, anyone there sort of representing that role, that place in the business, they really need to understand it from quite a personal level, I think, and know from a vulnerable level how that person's going to feel when they come in and asking for those accommodations. And it's not they're not coming in to make a fuss, and they're not coming in to be different or to make other people feel like, they're fine what they're doing, but actually I need more. So it is quite nuanced, and I do believe that as hopefully as more awareness grows, and people like you who are doing such great work, especially in LinkedIn, because I do feel Instagram, TikTok, there's already a space there. There's a level of understanding there is, but in that corporate feeling where it just still feel quite kind of like you're in a box and you've got to conform and everyone's got to be professional, and we're not allowed to talk about mental health or show vulnerability. We
Mm.
can't be successful and have mental health problems. We can't be
Mm.
successful and show our vulnerabilities. But we've got to break it all down and sort of rebuild it a little bit. And I guess what you're doing. Tell me a little bit about the ADHD works, what that is, and how people can access that, and what you're doing to support people.
Yeah, so when I was in my job, so I basically got diagnosed with ADHD at 25, managed to then calm down enough, got a job in law, but still was struggling with different aspects of the ADHD. Like we said, it's not like, oh, magical, woohoo, you're a wonderful human. Here's your new job, have a wonderful life. And so I was like scraping together money for therapy, and then I found out that there was government funding called Access to Work that could pay for people to have ADHD coaching. I was like, what? I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been spending like so much money on private diagnosis, medication, all of these things. Like, and I think I'd already written half of the book, most of the book, before even finding this out. And I was like, because that was purely me trying to figure out what this ADHD thing was. Because when I was diagnosed, I didn't believe it was real. And I definitely didn't think, even if it was real, like it wasn't something that affected me because my symptoms were so like emotional, like more than like I got all A's in my exams and stuff. Like exams not a problem because I could just memorize something for the day. Couldn't tell you what was in it afterwards, but like I could remember it for a day, do an exam on it, and then forget. Yeah, so I'd written this book, found out about Access to Work, applied for it, and then that was actually for me the first time I met someone that had also been diagnosed with ADHD. She used to be a lawyer as well. She was the ADHD advocate. Like it was really amazing coaching. And it just helped me so much because I think it was that validation, like what we've just discussed. And I'm sure so many people will feel like listening to your podcast as well. But like 5 years ago, these didn't exist. It's amazing because it's quite a short space of time, but like no one was talking about ADHD. There was nothing. If you on LinkedIn, it'd be like, oh, what is that? Like when I actually put my book up on LinkedIn, so it'd been 2 years ago. I was mortified. I like spent 2 weeks in bed crying. I also misspelt the title as AHD, which I only realized after posting it. But I deleted it and then was like, oh my god, like why have I just destroyed this career that I've finally managed to get. Like, why on earth did I need to tell anyone that I've got, like, mental health? Um, so, yeah, like, no one was really having these conversations, but for me, I had coaching, and it was just talking to someone, like, that had been through what I've been through, that could understand my brain, that could understand, like, the problems weren't me trying to, I think, get certain goals done. Like, the problem was that I didn't know what to even do in the first place, and, like, had so many ideas, but I couldn't figure out which ones to do, or this or whatever, how to fit into the world. So, yeah, having the coaching, which also was amazingly paid for by the government, really, really helped me. And, like, also at the same time working in law, and seeing these struggles that the companies had and supporting people with disabilities, like, because I worked with a lot of law firms, and, like, learning. And the same thing, that's why I really am quite passionate about giving people these resources, especially for free, because like, knowledge shouldn't cost people money, especially in the world of ADHD, where you're already having to pay so much
Yeah.
for, like, basic survival. But I feel very privileged to have been able to, like, understand all of that and have experience in knowing the law and, like, what reasonable adjustments are, for example. I never would have ever known that if I hadn't done that job in particular. And it's funny because at the time it felt so random, and now looking back, I'm like, "Oh, like, oh, we're linked up." But, I kinda had these different experiences through the coaching. Also, managed to publish that book I just mentioned, ADHD and A to Z. I just self-published it because I'd started getting people asking me about ADHD, and I would just send them the manuscript, and they were like, "This is so helpful, please publish it." I was like, "Really? Really don't." I was so humiliated in the first, month, and I was like, "I'm never gonna mention that ever again." Um
Was that your RSD kicking in? Was that fear of being exposed, the vulnerability? What was the bit, if you kind of try and analyze it now, what bit made you feel so scared, anxious, worried about sharing the book?
I think it was that I'd finally managed to, like, get a real job and be happy, and, like, yeah, I was even managing to live kind of quite well with ADHD at that time. So, like, why? I was just really scared, like, oh god, now, like, because I also worked with a lot of really incredible mental health and disability lawyers, and I was like, they're all gonna be like, what is, like, how could she possibly have a job? And, like, oh my god. And I was like, I've probably got things wrong in there because I just wrote it by myself, and it was, like, self-published. It wasn't, like, for a big publisher. Like, now it's been bought by a bigger publisher, but, like, I was like, just felt like such an important. I made the cover on Canva in, like, 10 minutes and obviously missed out, which I could fix really easily. But also I had the kind of reference point of, I published a book before that called The Model Manifesto, and that book, like, when it was launched, it ended up on, like, the cover of the Times, and I was in Lorraine, and, like, and so the contrast was, and I, like, wrote to a lot of, the journalists that I worked with before, and I was like, "Hello, I've published this book," and none of them replied. So, it was all of these, like,
Standard.
rejection things and being like, "Oh my god," and yeah, and so, and that's just really, and, like, I remember someone that sent an email around to my work being like, "Look how amazing Leanne is, she's published this book," and I was like, "Oh, can we just not, like, can no one ever, oh, no." Um,
It's a very body sort of visceral feeling, isn't it? Of that, like, oh, just make it go away. Like I remember in a very similar vein when I launched the podcast, I was terrified. I was like, what am I doing? It's like making me
mm,
feel physically sick that I was like putting myself out there. And it was like this muscle I had to keep flexing. Like every week I'd be like, oh my God, it's like podcast week. And then I realized the people who were listening and the people who were tuning in and listening every week were the people that needed it. And I wasn't really getting the feedback and the judgment I thought I was going to get. So that
yeah,
that kind of made me feel okay. That's okay because people who aren't interested in ADHD and neurodiversity aren't going to be listening and therefore not going to be judging. So it did get easier, but I totally get that. It was like I almost wanted to shut the whole thing down, throw my laptop in a bin and run away.
mhm. Yes, yes. And, like, how amazing is it that you didn't do that? But, like, my coach at the time, she said, "It's not about you, it's about them." Like, that was all the people that need the book, like, remembering your why, like, why you're doing it. And now I coach people a lot on similar things, and, like, well, like, no one cares. Like,
Yeah,
so what?
exactly.
Someone
Everyone
judges
cares
you.
about
People are judging you
themselves.
anyway. Yeah. They're all judging. You're not gonna know about it. If they do, just block them.
Yeah.
But, I'm really privileged to be in this position because I don't have to go into an office anymore, so I don't see people and worry about if they're judging me. I'm just like, "Oh, well." And I think the ADHD comes in really handy there because, like, like that book, I just kind of do it and then forget about it quite quickly, or like I'll
Mm.
just do things and then like they're kind of out of my mind. Whereas like yeah, it's a balance, but yeah, but I remember like the coaching session I had after publishing it, my coach was trying to be really, she was like, "You need to celebrate it," and I was like quite stressed at the time and just crying. I was like crying. I was like, "I don't want to talk about it." I was like, "Can we just not mention that book ever again?" She was like, but yeah, anyway, so long story short, but like ironically, about 3 months later, I got a message from someone on Microsoft. She was a like director at Microsoft person. She messaged me on Instagram and she said, "I loved your book. It really, really helped me so much. Can you come and train us at Microsoft?" I was like, "Okay." And my dad was like, "That's a hoax. Don't do it." He was like, "Don't give them your bank account details." I was like, I don't know. I had my model agent at the time, so I said to her, "Maybe you could deal with that." I was like, "I feel like we should charge them something, but I don't know what." And like, yeah, at the time, she was like, "What do you want to charge them?" I was like, £100. And she was like, "No." She charged them £1,500, and they were like, "Yeah, sure, fine." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what's that?" I'm like, "Right, okay, maybe I could do this as a job." And then yeah, and so I like left my job and then set this up again. And like when I first started coaching, the first people I spoke to were people that were really struggling at work in the same way. And like again, because they didn't know their rights, like things like reasonable adjustments and like the support they should have been entitled to, they were blaming themselves. They were like, "It's all my fault. I'm never going to get a job anywhere. I'm an awful person." I was like, "Actually, did you know that you can ask, for example, the interview questions in advance, and that isn't like it's like I had a girl, she would faint, when she was having interviews, like, because she got so stressed out, and I
Mhm.
was explaining to her, like, it's not special treatment to give you the interview questions in advance, like, not everybody else is fainting out of stress in the interview, it's like, it was recorded, I was like, they would have seen you fainting, being, like, mortified, like,
Mm.
but if we don't tell them in advance, but again, if you don't have that education, so that was pretty much what ADHD Works was about, set it up. I started out coaching, and now I've coached lots of people, but the demand for it is so high. I've got like a list of 200 people. Really sorry for listening to this, and I've not got back to you yet. I will next week, because we're now taking on like 25 new coaches next week actually. So I'm like training them up to help with the demand because there's just so much of it. And last year I tried to manage it by creating courses and doing group coaching, which again was like incredible. We had like over 500 people doing the courses, but for me personally, like by myself, me and my poor, poor virtual assistant Beth, they were just like podcast, retreat, this course, and like that's my ADHD. Where I'm like, we can do 5 things at once, and like
Yeah.
book law. And we redid the book last year as well of the publish, just like, so that was quite. It was a very intense burnout time, and now I'm trying to do it a bit more organizedly. Still like we do all different angles of it, like training up companies, and like I mentioned, we've got the ADHD retreats, which are really, really amazing to do. But hopefully now I'll be able to do it in a bit more of a like organized way, where it's not just like bootstrapping and me taking it all on by myself and exploding. Because by the end of last year, I kind of never wanted to hear about ADHD ever again. So
I mean, I'm listening to you and you're literally mirroring back to me my life. So thank you for that. Because I was exactly the
welcome.
same. Yeah, literally exactly the same. And I wanted to do it all and serve lots of people in different capacities. And at the end of last year, come mid-December, I was just so burnt out where I made this very intentional decision that January was going to be, downtime for me. And I was really going to kind of be more mindful about how I want to work and the capacity that I want to work in with a family and needing space and time for myself, my own well-being, because how can I serve other people if I am burnt out and exhausted and resentful that I haven't got time and space? So I've tried to be sort of reconfigure the way I work because burnout for so many of us with ADHD is always just there on the
Hmm.
just in the near distance, but we can always sense it and taste it and see it. And the signs, come back to us all the time when we're taking on too much. But with our ADHD brains, we have ideas, and sometimes it feels really hard not to fulfill them, especially when we go, "Oh my God, that'll be amazing. I'll do this and I'll do that." And I think our clients are the same, and the people listening to this are the same. So it's trying to be mindful of all the energy and all the help and all the activism and the sense of justice that we have, that we want to do it all and be it all and help everybody. But we are only this one person. Even training teams, like you're doing that for me is scary because I
Me
know
too.
how exhausting that can be. Um, so it's this passion that we have, this constant passion, but in a way we've always kind of keep it on a. So I always see it as like a bonfire that can go out, out of control, and we've kind of got to keep the ember. Is it ambers? What's the word?
Mm,
Burning on
embers.
embers,
Yeah.
embers burning on a low,
Oh, I
you
like
know. But we can very easily throw, like fire, fuel to it, and
very
it
good.
all goes crazy and goes to shit.
My
And
flat set on fire last week.
oh
Like, your
no,
heart.
that's
I was
wrong
just looking at
analogy
my
to
elbow and
you.
there was like a fire coming out of it. I was like, really? Really? Like,
Yeah.
should have wear my pajamas today. I had to call the fire engine.
Oh
Like, um,
no. Oh my god. Well,
yeah,
that
but it's a very good
sometimes.
analogy there.
Yeah, but sometimes those things that blow up literally in our lives is a little bit of a sign to us that we're taking on too much and we're doing too much
Yeah.
and and as much as it pains me sometimes to sort of play it small, the way I've reframed it now is that if I am serving the people in the way that I can serve, then at least I'm, doing that, because when I'm burnt out, the ripple effect is huge, with my family, friends, kids, and all of that. So, yeah, it's a bit of a tough one to swallow. I think it's a hard pill to swallow when you are a very creative person, but your well-being is also, it's kind of like we've always got to have like that way up of excitement, creativity, passion, but actually the burnout is always there as well. And yeah, something I'm still trying to learn. Maybe that's just life. Maybe we'll always just have to
Yeah.
always have that balance to keep checking in. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to talk to you, and it's amazing to hear what you're doing. And I always say this to like my guests when I see this like amazing passion. It's like always like, what do you do to keep that balance in check? What are you doing for your well-being? And if people are listening to and really resonating with this amazing activism and this advocacy and this need to help and desire to be of service, how are you then looking after yourself?
It's a good question. Yeah, and that's why I try to be really honest. Ironically, I think that's why my LinkedIn has gone well, like very not intentionally, but because I just write about how awful my life is, and people are like, "Oh, me too." And I'm like, "You want me to coach you? I can." But like last night, I was just hysterical all night. I was trying to. I've got a holiday booked next week and cancelled it because I was like, that would be really stressful for me to go on. It was like a skiing holiday, and but then I was like, maybe I just need to go somewhere hot by myself, and was like trying to find somewhere, but then got really overwhelmed at the different like places that you could go, and it's just like hysterically crying at the bottom of my stairs. It's like as my phone was going off with like hundreds of people sharing all the what's it called, like LinkedIn petition stuff, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. So yeah, but for me, there are a number of really important things that I try to make sure I keep in check. One is having coaching. So I have like so much coaching myself, which is almost too much, and I had to again at the end of last year like get rid of some people. But I've got like a coach and I see a therapist every week, like non-negotiable. Really great therapist that has really helped me a lot. But the coaching also really helped me to create short-term goals, which is what I do with my clients, but like they call it breaking marathons into sprints. Like, because having ADHD, we do have, like you said, like the idea, and then it's the execution of it, and then it's the following it up. And but like I will try now to set shorter term goals like every 3 months or every month so that I know what to say no to. Like one thing, for example, is not taking on like calls. Like when I first started, I would just have so many calls with people that wanted to chat about XYZ, and now I just say no, well, can't do it. Which is really important because I know about myself, like if I talk to someone about something they want, or like again, like something I'm quite passionate about, I will end up spending my whole day like trying to help them and build their business and be like, wait, and then get angry and then be like, why did I do that for free? No one appreciates me. Blah. Anyway, so I know this about myself now. So it's kind of built like preemptively building in the barriers to yourself. Beth, my virtual assistant, is a really big part of that because she is she's in charge of like inboxes and stuff and sending out like templates, and we've got really good systems that if you want to do the course on being self-employed and having ADHD, like kind of put them all in there. But having systems for like incoming inquiries and sales and things like that. Like, I found a sales coach last year who's been really helpful for me with ADHD as well, because being self-employed, you're like, there's so many different aspects to it, but like money is a big one. Like when I started out, I was like, oh, idea, woohoo, wonderful things. But actually, like I had a really helpful coach at the start who said you need to make sure you're making money every day first before like going off and saving the world. Otherwise, you can't do any of that. So I try to make sure that I prioritize like money and staying alive, and not taking on too many clients. As long as it comes down to boundaries, like having a very few number of clients now that I work with intentionally, because like right now I'm trying to build up the coaching course so that I can actually make that, what is the word? It's like basically helping more and more people get the support, because as a coach, I can only take on a certain number of people anyway at any one time. But by training up other people, kind of delegating, boundaries, exercise, really, really important. Like last year when I burnt out, I was like, oh, I just need to go to Australia for a month, which is my go-to like bad thing to do. Like buying flights across the world. So I was like, maybe I just need to go and like work somewhere hot for a month, and actually, what I needed to do was, like, get back into really small habits, like going to yoga every day, not, like, going to Australia, but actually just, like, these daily small habits, which, again, coaching really helped me get back into, because I found someone that helped me, like, just even figure out how to do it, like, time-wise, and how what routine and accountability. And, like, for me, I know that I can create these amazing routines and I can stick to them perfectly for a while, and I will fall off it. And like if you're listening to this, you will too. But then it's just about getting back on it, and like each time you do know the things that help you the most, and like the things that you can do, and like also the signs that you are about to burn out as well. Like, and hopefully putting in things like preemptive things that, like for me is things like, okay, like this morning me and my Beth, we went through my calendar and we're like, what can we take out because we got too busy the week. So these kind of things of like, okay, we need to like reduce now. So being conscious, hopefully that was a helpful long
No,
overly long explanation.
that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and so much of it I resonate with. And the last one that you just said then of like going through my calendar, that's like a weekly thing now. I just go through my calendar, and what's already on my mind. So what's interesting is that this week is quite a nice week. I've kind of balanced it really well. And then because next week is where my week has got busier, and already in a week, I've in my
Yes.
head, the fear is kicking in of my busy week. And I don't think people with ADHD recognize this, is that we think so much ahead, that we're so ahead of time, that the anxiety is taking over now. So that's already mentally depleting us, burning us out, because I'm worrying about next week already. And even
Yeah.
though this week is decent, I'm like, oh my God, next week I'm going to be so stressed. I'm going to be this, I'm going to be running. And so it is that it's constantly being a little bit ahead, which is hard again with our executive functioning and, planning. But it is so worth it. It's just so worth being intentional and mindful about our capacity and what depletes us, because that is, for me, that's the key to my managing my ADHD. All the other stuff is great, like nutrition, exercise, sleep, all my supplements, making sure I'm not drinking too much caffeine. Like all of that is like a curated formula. I've kind of got locked down. But the things that throw me off guard and my emotional dysregulation and anxiety just come back with full pelt is overcommitting, having like my boundaries being skewed, people creeping in to my boundaries a little bit unknowingly. And that's what, really kind of throws me off. So it is just, and to have a coach, I mean, going back to what you just said, then coaching is possibly the best thing. And I know that Dr. Ned Halliwell says that, yes, medication is incredible, but without the support, the therapy, and the coaching, it's kind of not the best, because we need to then learn new skills. We need to learn how to reframe things and look at things. And like you say, if we know how to work the system and we understand what we are allowed to get through access to work, if you're listening in the UK, there's different ways that we can access this help, group coaching, anything like that. And so I think what you're providing is fantastic. Your book is, so helpful to so many people. And I guess, what you're doing on the bigger scale with the parliament and lobbying and going in there and doing the things that so many of us wish we could do, but you're actually doing. You're actually doing this and putting yourself out there and creating change. And I think, so many of us are really grateful. So I want you to be kind to
Yeah.
yourself, maintain your energy, try not to overcommit,
Yes,
but
thank you.
also I just want to, give you that gratitude and recognition for all that you're doing. But can you tell people how they can find you if they're really resonating with what you're saying? What's the best way of finding you in a non-overwhelming way?
Uh, got the book ADHD and A to Z, ADHDworks.info, and you can just find me on any platform, Leanne Maskell. But if I can finish for a point of the activism stuff, because you asked
Mm,
me about it earlier, and I don't know the activism and advocacy work, and like even the parliament stuff. Like this thing now, I just signed a petition and got an email and just shared it on my LinkedIn. And then people are like, "It's Leanne's petition." I was like, "It's not my petition. I just signed it." And I just made a tool, but actually, it's like all of the activism work is so. I think it's just like one person. Like I just added on a letter, and so many other people have like commented and shared it, and like it's like a big chain of it, but it's really easy, especially in the world of social media, especially in the world of ADHD, where we do have a lot of social justice and like passion, and we want to like make a change and do things. The biggest thing I'd say is like you don't have to have billions of followers. You don't have, there's nothing special about like what I do. Not to put myself down at the end of this, but all I do is just kind of I'm like, "Well, whatever, like, if someone judges me, it's fine." Like, I already judge myself too much. "Hello, welcome." But it's, like, kind of just being passionate and, like, using your voice and, like, in whatever way that feels right to you at whatever point, but, like, also knowing that you can't change the world anyway and, like, things that's the way to do it. It's just, like, actually do what feels right for you and authentic and, like, don't compare yourself to other people and, like, look at social media and be like, "I need to be doing this thing that this person's doing." Like, just do what feels right to you, but also know, like, you don't have to do anything. Like, you don't owe anyone anything. Could talk to a lot of people who do amazing things in their workplaces, like they set up neurodiversity networks and advocate, but they're not being paid anything to do it, and they have to do it on top of their other jobs, and, yeah, it's really stressful, like and yeah, like, you don't have to do any of these things, like, you as well, Kate, like, you've really got such an incredible podcast that is, like, such an amazing resource for so many people, and, like, even if you never did another podcast ever again, like, you've got it out there in the world, it's amazing, you've done enough, we've all done enough, we can all go to bed and have a
Oh,
good rest.
yes.
Holiday.
Amen. I
Maybe
mean,
I'm
that
expressing good.
it's so nice to hear that. And, I feel this pressure and I compare myself 100% because what I don't do on social media is do these cool posts with graphics. And I
Yeah.
follow all like amazing accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers who do these amazing, slideshow kind of
Mhm.
carousel. Like, wow, that would take me about 15 hours in Canva to do one thing.
Me
And
too.
words don't come out of me, they come out of me while I'm having a conversation, that's when I'm like, "That was profound, but that would never come out on Canva." So,
Mhm.
I have to recognize that that's not my zone of genius. My zone of genius, I hope, is just having a conversation like this and recording it and putting it out there. My zone of
Yes.
genius is never gonna be, creating fancy graphics on Instagram, and that's why I don't have the hundreds of thousands of followers, but the followers I hope I have are the ones that are just interested in hearing when I do decide to make a do a post. And it kind of does look like a 7-year-old has done it, but apart from that, like, it's mine, it's the way I wanna, communicate. But that is a new way of thinking. That wasn't, a few months ago, a year ago, I was like, "I need to do this, I should be doing that.
Mhm.
It's gonna take me seriously. If I ever wanna write a book, I ever wanna have this, I need to have
Mhm.
more followers." And now it's not there. I've kind of just really stepped into that place of like, this is what I can offer with the capacity that I have. This is the energy I have. It's finite. And my energy has to go to my kids first and for, and obviously I care a lot about my audience and my clients and the listeners, but I can't burn out because my kids need me. And I have so much mental health issues in my family that that is my priority. So yeah, I just want to thank you for that recognition because I think we all need that reminder, don't we? That we just do what we
Mhm.
do. And like you say, if one person is doing something in a company of 10 people, that ripple effect from those 10 people go to another 10 people. And that is enough. What we do is enough. So yeah.
We're already enough.
We're enough.
Your first priority should be you and your well-being.
Yeah.
We should
But
all take a break, yeah, but it's a really hard world. Like, we're just expected to be everything, like podcasters, social media experts, millions of followers, book authors, this, that, and like I would just like to say from the other side of the platform now of like having all the books and stuff, and like it doesn't make you any happier. Like even financial success and stuff. Like you're just like, well, I still can't do my wash. I've still not washed my bed sheets for like 3 months. So I don't know what I was meant to get here. What's the end goal? But like, it's just being nice to yourself and like trying to find things that make you feel happy on a day-to-day basis. And like, if you want to help people, you're already helping people.
I just want to thank you so much, Leanne, because I really love this conversation, and it's been great to actually meet you in real life and chat, and see
Thank you.
past the LinkedIn posts and everything that you do, and just have a lovely human to human conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do, Kate. Thanks for doing the podcast. For me and all your followers. We all
Oh,
appreciate it.
thanks, Leanne. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope you found what you were looking for in this conversation, and it's helped guide you towards some further self-healing, self-exploration, and most importantly, self-acceptance. And if you have enjoyed this conversation and would like to experience more of my work, such as access to exclusive live workshops and opportunities for group coaching sessions, connecting with other like-minded women, and a general feeling of belonging, please come and check out my monthly membership, the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Collective. I've made it as affordable as possible, and I offer you lots of resources and opportunities for connection and support from other women all around the world being diagnosed with ADHD later on in life. I'd absolutely love to see you there. All the details are in this episode's show notes or on my website, adhdwomenswellbeing.co.uk. See you in the next episode.